Hey everybody, Jeff Miller here. I am the head of GRE instruction at Target Test Prep. Today we're going to talk about 5 tips when taking GRE practice exams. We're going to go through what you do at the beginning of your prep and then how you should take them at the end of your prep. And after doing so, hopefully you'll be ready to knock the GRE out of the park. Tip number 1. Start your GRE prep with full-length practice exams or one full-length practice exam. Now, you may be wondering, why do I do this? Well, as I tell all my students, you need to have a starting point. If you don't, think about how grueling your test prep is going to be. Think about how demotivating it's going to be to know that you have to do all of this stuff, but you don't really know where you need to end up based on your starting point. It could take you 2 months or it could take you 6 months. The point is, you need to know where you're starting from so you can see the road ahead and get some sort of estimate of how far you need to go to achieve your target score. Now, that's one part of it. The second part is, well, how do you take that first practice test? Well, don't take it completely cold. Spend 2 to 3 days maybe getting familiar with the structure and the format of the GRE. Do a couple practice questions. You don't have to go crazy, just so you have a decent foundational spot when you're taking this first practice test. Now, when taking the test, this is also very important. Make sure that you take it using realistic test day conditions. If you don't know what those are, do a little research on the ETS website to see how test day goes, but I can give you a few pointers here. If you're taking it at the test center, try to take it in a quiet place. Use paper and a pencil for your scratch paper. Only take the breaks that they give you, nothing more. Well, it could be nothing less if you don't want to take a break, but I advise doing so. And take it in one sitting. If you're taking the GRE at home on your computer in your own house, use the same computer you'll be using. Get a whiteboard and dry erase marker, which you'll be able to use during your online exam. And again, don't pause the exam. Don't try to take it over multiple days. Just get an accurate score. So again, you can see where you're starting, where you need to end up, and then you'll have a good idea of what things are going to look like moving forward. Tip number 2, analyze the results of your initial practice test. Don't just take it and move on to your prep. I'm not saying to spend a week or 2 on, the review of that test, but look, go through each section, question by question, see what you got wrong. I'm not saying you're going to build your whole study strategy around that because, yeah, it's a pretty small sample size. We're only talking about 40 quant questions and 40 verbal questions, but still, look at what you got wrong. Get a real feel for what's going on with your overall abilities, right? And then once that's complete, of course, yes, dive into your study plan. And I'll say it again, don't build your study plan on the results of this practice test. I repeat, do not do that. Students try to do it all the time, and I always have the same answer. It's too small of a sample size. So just take a general overview, look at some bird's eye view of your strengths and weaknesses, then move on to your study plan and move forward from there. Tip number 3, and this is a biggie, master the material before taking any more practice exams. Once again, I talk to students a lot. What do students try to tell me they want to do? They want to take practice tests every weekend. I need to get used to timing and practice and the rigors of test day. So here's the deal. I'm going to talk about this soon, but at the end of your prep, you're going to take enough tests so that you're good understanding what it's going to take, the mental fortitude it'll take to get through an ETS exam or an official GRE. In the meantime, hopefully the prep materials you're using, like if you're a Target Test Prep student, for example, you're doing time practiced as you learn. Taking a practice test every weekend is not only grueling, but it's not going to give you anything that's going to be helpful because you're going to be getting stuff wrong that you haven't actually done yet in your prep, and it's probably going to hurt your confidence. It's also going to have you do a lot of tests which you don't need to do throughout your prep, just ones at the end of your prep. And I would rather you spend that time learning and getting through your study plan because your GRE journey is going to take time and you don't need to interrupt it every weekend with a practice exam. So follow your study plan, wait to take your practice exams. Trust me, once you have mastered GRE Quant and GRE Verbal, you will be ready to take those practice tests. Tip number 4, begin taking weekly GRE practice tests at the end of your prep. So, as I discussed and mentioned, at this point, you've mastered GRE Quant, you've mastered GRE Verbal. Now's the time to start taking those practice exams. Remember, you probably took the first one at the beginning. That was the first free ETS practice exam. That leaves you with one free test. It's called Power Prep 2. And then you have 3 Power Prep Plus exams. Those have to be purchased, but they're awesome and definitely worth taking. So that's 4 exams. If you space them out every 5 days, we're talking about 20 days. If you space them out each week, 7 days in between, we're talking about a month of prep time left before test day. Do what's right for you. Obviously, I don't want you jamming a test in after a long day of work. So if you only can take them on Saturdays or Sundays, then maybe space them out about 7 days apart. The same rules apply as before too. Replicate test day conditions. At this point, you know if you're taking the online GRE or if you're taking the in-person GRE, so just replicate those test day conditions because the scores of these tests are very, very important, right? You have a target score in mind and you should be hitting that target score in these practice exams. If you don't, then okay, you may have to kind of recalibrate what it is you're going to do. Are you going to push your GRE? Are you going to take it anyway, see how you do, and then retake it? These are all decisions you have to make, but the data from these practice tests will show you the way forward. And look, if after the first one you don't do so well, as we'll talk about in a second, you're going to spend time reviewing, and hopefully that'll lead to a higher score in the next one. So don't make any knee-jerk reactions just after the first practice test. Take 1 or 2 at least, and then you can see where you're at, and then you can make a final decision on if your test day is realistic or if you should push it back to a later date. Tip number 5, and the final tip, is analyze the results in between the GRE practice exams. This makes sense, right? Now, even though you're talking about still 40 quant and 40 verbal questions, it's still a small sample size, but it's meaningful because you've done all your prep up to this point. So if you notice that you get a strengthening the argument question wrong in the verbal side, well, then maybe that means you have to review that topic. If you get a percent change question wrong in quant, then again, you have to review that topic. So what's really cool is now you're going to see all these micro deficiencies that you might have, but hey, you're going to spend about a week in between each practice test. So you're going to go back to your prep materials. You're going to work on those topics. You're going to do maybe some more topical practice to see if there's more gaps that need filling. And then a week later, you're going to go and you're going to take the next practice test. As I just said, if your practice tests are not trending the way you want them to, yes, you will have to make a decision. Do I push the test? Do I not push the test? A lot of this has to do with application deadlines as well, but this is also why you want to give yourself the time you need to prep, to study, to take the practice exams, and move things around if you need to. But this is a very important process that we discussed today, and if you can follow this path of taking your practice exams, this will be great and advantageous for you as you move through your prep, and hopefully you'll just be at a place when you take the final Power Prep Plus 3 exam where you'll be taking the test 5 to 7 days later and you'll knock it out of the park. So this concludes today's video. I had a blast talking about some tips you can follow when taking GRE practice exams. If you enjoyed today's video, please subscribe to our channel as we will be posting more videos in the coming weeks. And as always, if you have some ideas of videos you'd like me to discuss, leave a comment. We'd be happy to get to them in future videos. And thanks for watching, and we look forward to chatting soon.